Hi, Pauline. How are you?
Hello, Tiffany, and hello, everybody out there in the virtual world. Super
I know. I'm
excited.
so excited that we're ending together, first of all. I was just listening in on the panel before, and I'm like really fired up. I think Shelly left the room like in awe a bit. And what she was talking about has a lot to do with your story as well as just being a very powerful woman in your position right now, but also a mom. And I know that we'll talk a little bit about that in just a bit, but I'm super excited to have this conversation with you.
Same
So,
here. And I remember attending my first female quotient event at CES. I want to say this was early days as well, like Lataria's example 5 years ago as a panelist, and just talking about diversity and inclusion for women of color in the industry. And it was a great conversation. And I really enjoy watching what Shelly has done with that platform and bringing women together and educating the overall marketplace about women in the workplace. So,
same. Yeah, super exciting.
yeah.
Okay, so I wanna bring us to where we are now. Small story for the world to know. I first met Pauline at our company called Maker Studios, which was acquired by Disney a couple years ago. And the first way that I met you was there was a woman there giving me a tour on like my second day in the office, and she had asked me, "Have you met Pauline yet?" And I was like, I've met so many people, like, I'm not sure. She's like, you'll know when you meet Pauline in the best way possible. And it was from then on, I ended up meeting you. And I think I was just super nervous. I can't even remember the time, like what exactly we were talking about. But I knew then and there that this was someone who I just wanted to stay connected to for time, even outside of this office. And so I just had to tell you that. I know that we didn't talk about this in our prep call, but I wanted to tell you that because I feel like uh, I think Will Smith said it best. You'll know who you are and kind of how far you've come as an individual by those who you're most connected to in professional settings and personal ones. So I just have to throw that out there.
Oh
Quick
my
story for the group.
goodness. You make me emotional. And we're supposed to have a professional conversation. So thank you for that. But you're going to make me emotional. And I think the world of you as well, Tiffany. I knew from the day that I met you that we would stay connected as well. You're a bright light.
Love this love session. Okay, let's get a little bit more tactical. I want the world to kind of hear you and your journey and where you've come from. Tell us how, I know you're also under a month, I think, in at Essence right now. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about your background in media and just how you've gotten to where you are today.
Sure. So I'm currently the Chief Revenue Officer of Essence Communications and Essence Ventures. For those out in the virtual world, Essence Communications, you may know us as a magazine that has been serving Black women deeply for over 50 years, and our biggest event, Essence Festival of Culture. But we've actually evolved into a 360 platform where we are speaking to over 31 million Black women globally on a daily basis across multiple footprints and touch points, from our website to our podcast, through influencer or creator activations, and really through events. Separate from that, Essence Ventures also includes other properties like Beautycon. We're rebooting the world famous Beautycon festival this year, that is all about beauty enthusiasts and connecting creators with their fans, as well as Afropunk, which sort of is an alternative. Think Woodstock meets Coachella, meets like just Afro funky Black people from Brooklyn, and then naturallycurly.com. So that's the Essence overall ventures and an ecosystem. And been there for about 30 days, as you mentioned. So very, very new, but to your point, not new to digital media or media in general. And I'm gonna date myself. I've been in digital media since 1999, and in digital media, which is Web 1.0, which is kind of unique because, you know, most people that I've met in media either started in print or they started in television. And I had interned at Kraft Foods, fun fact, during college, and really wanted to be a brand marketer and worked there really throughout my college career. I grew up in New York, and Yonkers, if you're with me, YO, Yonkers, New York. And this is when Kraft Foods was located in White Plains. So I'm really dating myself. This was mid 90s, right? And then they relocated to Chicago. So I knew I was going to be a brand marketer. I encountered some of the most phenomenal women being that this is Women's History Month. I encountered some of the most phenomenal women at Kraft Foods that really helped shape my career. One of them being a legend, Ann Fudge, who was the first Black woman to be a CEO of an ad agency, Y&R. So that caliber of women, and at the time, she was president of Maxwell House. So really unique experience where I encountered really strong women. Cheryl Atkins Green, who's currently the CEO of Mary Kay, she was also a mentor to me at Kraft Foods. So really just encountered these incredible women at Kraft Foods. So I was like, this is great. I'm going to be a brand marketer. But kept reading about these digital companies that were kind of forging a new frontier on the internet. And I am one of 6 kids, child of Jamaican immigrants. And, you know, Jamaicans are, it's like, my father's like, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Don't come to me with any other career path. Marketing was cool to him. He kind of understood that. But then I threw them for a loop and said, you know what? I have my entire life to go back to working in brand and consumer marketing. I think I want to kind of figure out this thing on the internet and see where it takes me, because this is a completely new frontier. It's really exciting. I think it's going to change the way that change everything, right? And this was back in like 98, 99. Mm-hmm. Really dating myself now, so you guys kind of can figure out how old I am. And that sort of early insight led me to my first startup, shopping.com, where I was employee number 35 out of 400 employees. And it was a truly transformative experience for me, because it was very different from Kraft Foods, right? Very, when you talk about height of corporate America, very structured. Shopping.com was the opposite of structure. It was very unstructured, but it gave me an incredible opportunity to forge sort of a new frontier, got me interested in sales. And the company went on, I stayed there for about 4 years. The company went on to be acquired by eBay for $650 million. And prior to that, they went public. So it was IPO and also got acquired. So really interesting experience for me, because that's also like where I kind of set my stage on eventually moving into becoming a CRO, because the CRO at the time was just so innovative, and he was constantly thinking of new ways on how to make revenue and monetize. And that really made a big impact on me in terms of coming up with like new monetization strategies and watching him. And I said, this is what I want to do eventually. I want to learn from this person. And so I said a lot in that one question, but that is sort of like how I set path on a career journey. And I was pretty focused on in terms of that transformative experience at Kraft, and where I knew I wanted to be a business decision maker, have a high level kind of career, but again, sort of seeing what was happening with media at that time in the early days led me on this path. And then kind of connecting with this white man who was the opposite of me, but seeing sort of like the cool things that he was doing in terms of monetization really intrigued me. And that's sort of what set me on the path of where I am today,
Yeah.
20 years later.
what really jumped out to me in all of that, and I think that, I mean, it was, you've had a robust life so far, so I think it was plenty, it was not too much. I'm hearing a through line has been knowing a little bit, at least, what you are very passionate for or about or interested in, potentially things that you weren't interested in either, that you continue to just like not lean into. But what would you say was the through line to kind of put you in your next position? Was it just constantly being curious? I'm kind of hearing there's like a gut feeling you might have had throughout the path as well.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer of um, learning always, you continual or perpetual learning, right? And I think sort of this quest and desire to stay on the cusp of what's new, and to learn um, new sort of structures and paths, and especially like what was so fascinating about digital media and what made me so passionate about it was how it was just disrupting so many different industries, right? And I knew I wanted to be a part of that. I didn't know I didn't want to be an engineer. I didn't want to necessarily create the disruption, but I knew that, I had a passion for sort of consumer marketing, like that audience, and how people consume media, and also and interested in that innovation. And really, like when I went to shopping.com, it helped kind of crystallize like, oh, this is how I'm sort of putting it together. They're sort of forging a new path on how people shop online, right? And it was very iterative for me in terms of my career, moving from shopping.com to then going to like the early days of MySpace, and how they remember MySpace, how they transformed social media, but then Facebook just took it to a whole nother level. But that quest to learn and always be a part of, where, how people are consuming media, and sort of like where that disruption is happening, has always just been a fire within me, where I wanted to be a part of that. And I wanted to be a part of forging new paths, and creating like what's next, and
Yeah.
being a part of that and playing a role in that.
I think that's awesome to hear, because I mean, so many people listening in that are probably at different points in their career, and some might have a very linear route, or assumingly like linear route, which could be the case at certain parts of your career. But I'm hearing, like, especially given everything that's happened in the last couple of years, and just the way companies are kind of being flipped on their head to reevaluate what makes sense from a brand perspective, from an ethos perspective, and like what they really believe in, it's given people the opportunity to check in on themselves as well, and pivot towards those things that they're passionate about. So to talk more about your passion specifically, I want to call out the term equitable media. Can you tell us what that means to you, and kind of what you're doing in your role now at Essence?
Yeah, and you know, um, that's a great question. So, and kind of like what brought me to Essence, and like that sort of hunger and desire, if you will, to be innovative. And while I was doing that, another passion of mine, as I was going through and navigating these spaces, I was often the only person that looked like me in the room. And especially like startups, I was like maybe out of employees, 400 employees, I was one of four maybe Black employees and the only woman. And as I grew in my career, I was either the only one, or one of two. Even when we were at Maker, it was like a handful of us, right? And so personally, I started to create sort of like an event series to empower and connect Black women. That you've attended those events, Tiffanie, right? And to kind of connect us all together. And that was always kind of like my own mini female quotient, if you will, where women who are like either rising stars or leaders in their field that are women of color, all coming together and networking and building connectivity, and ultimately just creating a shared space, right? And that was incredibly like a big passion of mine, is to help develop like who's next from a career standpoint, especially for women who that are Black women, right? That I'm deeply passionate about. I'm a mother of 2 girls, and we're going to talk about that. And when I said I'm one of 6 kids, there's 5 girls. So I'm very passionate about women. And so for me, I started that in my personal career. And during COVID, especially in light of George Floyd, I wanted to make that a bigger mission of mine, not just in my personal life, but really melding like my personal passions and my professional passions in terms of innovation, and really bringing that together. And the opportunity to come to Essence was really serendipitous. One of my colleagues reached out to me and informed me that Richelieu Dennis, which is the owner of Essence, an incredible sort of icon in the business world, which I'll get to in a minute, was looking for an executive leader and at Essence. And Richelieu Dennis was the founder of Sundial. Sundial is the brand or conglomerate behind Shea Moisture. That's one of their biggest brands. He sold Sundial to Unilever in 2018 for $2 billion. And after that acquisition, he also bought Essence from Time Inc. Essence has been around for 50 years, and Time had owned it for quite some time. And Richelieu had a vision to make Essence Black owned again. So he bought Essence in 2018. And in addition to that, not only did he want to serve Black women deeply from a media perspective, but also from a business perspective. There's an incredible wealth gap in this country as it relates to equality and from business ownership to wealth creation. And what Rich Dennis did is he created this New Voices Fund in this same time frame, which was a $100 million fund that was completely targeted to Black women entrepreneurs. And in the past 2 years, that fund has created over 30 millionaires, female Black millionaires. And that's not their product sales, that's their bank accounts. All of that culmination of serving Black women deeply, from celebration to empowering her from a business perspective, all of that culmination really, to me, was just sort of a perfect sort of blend between my passion and synergy in terms of what I wanted to do next. And then being in digital media for over 20 years, when I started and when you talked about Essence, the vision is to really future-proof Essence for the next 50 years. We've evolved past a magazine and an event. We're really, like I said, a multi-platform company, and really looking to future-proof and build and forge sort of a Black media company of the future through partnerships with Influential that we've been talking about, and building out our influencer activation services, and like leveraging your capabilities and AI, and doing a lot of other things in terms of like first party data. So really kind of building a company of the future, if you will, sort of the next frontier. So all of those things sort of culminating together is what led me to this new opportunity. And it just sort of just feeds my soul, but then also feeds my professional passion as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's so it's great to hear. And I feel like there's going to be, even more companies that hopefully are leaning in that same direction and looking to not only, fill certain voids that they may have internally as a company, but then also make sure from a consumer lens that they're serving all audiences and upfront, not as a secondary thought. So I love to hear that. And I'm super excited about you being in this position and the magic you're going to be able to create with the company. I want to lean in a little bit more about innovation. And what do you think that that looks like from a marketing lens moving forward? There's so much going on. I know the last panel talked a little bit about Web3. What do you think about innovation from a media perspective?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things there, and I kind of want to go back to about also just equitable outcomes too that we talked about before I touch on the innovation, because I think what's important too is when I talk about forging a Black media company of the future. One of the big things for us is creating those equitable partnerships, right? And you saw kind of like post George Floyd, um, companies sort of pledging and raising their hands of spending more because there were deficits, right? And for many years, Black media companies were underfunded. From a sponsorship perspective, they were often discounted or marginalized. And I think there's been sort of a watershed moment in the era of George Floyd where you see more and more companies saying they're going to pledge to support the Black community and Black-owned media, but there really needs to be more of that, especially when you're talking about innovation, which is a good segue into your next question, because often Black media or creators, if you will, are setting the trends and they're being the innovators, if you will, especially on platforms like TikTok, where they're the trendsetters, be it through the cultural, the dances that a lot of the TikTok creators are making, or the music, but often they're not getting those equitable outcomes in being in like the top 10 biggest earners in Forbes, when you're talking about the digital creator economy. So when you're talking about innovation and where we see ourselves going is really trying to also close that gap for creators in the digital creator ecosystem, kind of bringing what I was talking about with creating those new sort of millionaires and entrepreneurs and funding that from a capital perspective. How do we then take also that focus and those expertise and closing the gap to create more equitable outcomes for creators that are, for all intents and purposes, creating the culture on platforms, but not necessarily getting the financial benefit, if you will.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that back up. Something, we too are very much so in that space, working with, any and all creators, but making a really proactive and intentional commitment to those that could potentially be underserved in a variety of different communities. And I know Lataria can talk about that probably at the end of this as well. Tell me a little bit about thinking about your personal side of things and your journey as a woman, as someone who's looking to build a family. Tell me a little bit about what that was like. Were there opportunities for you to have chose one lane versus another? Was there a huge focus to make sure that you're doing everything at the same time? Tell me a little bit about that.
Did you say you're thinking about making a family? Did I hear that? Hear that little
I mean,
Freudian slip?
eventually tell me how to do it.
Like I thought I heard that Freudian slip. I am my father's daughter, which means that I've always been sort of unapologetic about how I pursued my career and my passion. I feel that for me, in order to serve others, be it my children, my husband, I have to be authentically me, and being authentically me is being unapologetic of my ambition and drive. So for me, a career was a big part of who I am, and striving for excellence. And, God blessed me with a partner who was very supportive of that. Because I think that the career that I have, it wouldn't be possible without his support. And so I think partnership is incredibly important in terms of having someone that is supportive of you. When I say it feeds my soul, it allows me to show up better for my children, for my family, because I'm truly pursuing my passion and what I'm doing in my work. And it's one of the things that makes me happy. I have hobbies outside of work. And, but it was really important for me. I've been intentional about my career. I was also very intentional about how I built my family and my personal life. So I think the advice that I would give is that intentionality, or the right partner that's supportive of you is super important. And then also intentionality with my children. I loved what Shelley said in terms of be unapologetic about, don't sneak out of work. Now it's kind of virtual, but don't sneak out of work to go to that soccer game. And I'm always intentional with my children as well. And the same way that I'm showing up at work, I show up for them and try to create those moments with them where I am. My thing is like bedtime, where I'm like very intentional, where I know that that is my quality time with them, to read them a bedtime story. So it's like finding those moments in the day in terms of advice where you can show up for your kids, and know that mommy cares. So that's sort of, not to be too sappy.
Yeah.
My
Well,
approach.
I think that's helpful. I'm curious to know, was there any one in particular, or any advice that you received that allowed that experience for you to happen? Because I know that there's, again, so much always going on in the world in our careers, and oftentimes you could be put in a position where it's not as easy to make the jump in one direction or another. Is there advice that you've received that has helped you? Or I can also kind of put that on its side, you leaned into a little bit, you were able to foster, things outside of work for your own or personal development, and kind of ways to offline. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit on either of those.
Yeah, I don't have a witty quote to share on this. It's really like been through sort of trial and error, really. I think that as women, especially now as we are growing in our careers, quite frankly, the model that I used to see a lot of women who are very successful were often women who were single, or did not have children. And I knew I did not want to be that. So in terms of sort of being a model, as I mentioned, I'm one of 5 girls, and my first sort of mentors were my big sisters. And so that are like my best friends, they're my mentors, especially one in particular who has an incredibly successful career in corporate America, and she's also a mom of 2 kids. So I really, in terms of example, a role model, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. It was really us kind of figuring it out through trial and error, and having a great support system, my tribe, I say, of not just my sisters, but friends, where we're all kind of living and breathing the same similar lifestyles, and really sort of peer-to-peer mentoring each other, in terms of, so I would say my tribe and village, we're all kind of writing this story and narrative together. I think that we've been forging new paths, and I can't point to say this person, I looked at this person and modeled my life after them, because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. We're all kind of figuring it out together.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's very honest and authentic. And I think that's super helpful to know from an audience perspective. It's almost like, so I want to say, because of women like you in leadership roles like this, that number is growing. More women taking on executive level roles at potentially traditional companies. As that stat continues to grow, it seems like there's a stat on the opposite side, that more audiences continue to be served in more equitable ways. And that all comes down to research and numbers, and making sure that data is a through line in a lot of the decisions that we're making as companies, as marketers, as founders, as entrepreneurs. How important has research been on both sides of it? making sure maybe the company stands a certain direction as far as like employees are concerned, but then also it serves audiences that we want to.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot there to unpack. So when you're talking about research and data, like being a media company, and we collect a lot of data on our consumers and audiences, right? And we believe that the woman, especially like we serve Black women, are the chief executive officers of their families and their homes. And the data shows that, right? When you just look at the buying power, specifically in even the Black community, it's close to $2 trillion. And 80% of household decisions are made by the woman. So that data deeply guides us in terms of, women, and the women that we serve are the key decision makers in their household. And also when you talked about how the kind of like the evolution of work and looking at where we are with more and more women in leadership roles. And then I think you kind of also have seen decline too. It's interesting, right? Because with the pandemic, there's been many gains in terms of leadership, but then you also see women leaving the workforce as well. And with the pandemic, you also saw the opposite trend, especially mothers, right, who had to take care of their children during online schooling, which the struggle was real in our household as well. Like, so it's really interesting in terms of there's different trend lines. And so when it's all said and done, even seems like we're coming out of the pandemic. When it's all said and done, it's like I see different types of narratives building, right? You see sort of this exodus of people, of women specifically, leaving the workforce, but then you've also seen this ascension, especially like I would say even gains with women of color. But I think that there's still a lot of work to be done. When you look at the Fortune 500 in terms of CEOs, only one of the 500 CEOs is a Black woman, and that's Rosalind Brewster of Walgreens, right? So we still have a lot of work to go. If you're just looking at sort of like that Fortune 500, and the stats are still there where even for all women, the higher you go as far as title, it's still like single digits, if you will, in that C-suite. So yes, there has been strides, but if we're looking at the data, there's still a long way to go as well there's still a lot that Essence needs to do, a lot that female quotient needs to do. Shout out to Shelley. So there's still a lot of work to be done as we sort of are ending this Women's History Month.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I can definitely see, like, for example, in my friend group, there's a lot of people who took a step back potentially from their jobs and started definitely fueling whatever was a side business into something a little bit larger and becoming entrepreneurs in their own right, or being, really involved in creative spaces to, again, be part of the storytelling that these companies might be exhibiting. So that's a good point for sure. We have more work to do as a whole.
And also a lot of those women too, I think, a key point that what you're making there in terms of women starting their own businesses, I think sometimes often culturally at companies, it may not be a space where women can thrive.
Yeah.
Right. Not all, but like talking about the data, you see more and more entrepreneurship and more people with this great resignation, right? Where it's given people a lot of time to think about what really drives them, what really serves them, right? And sort of you see much more entrepreneurship happening, or people, just to your point, starting those side hustles or businesses because they may have not been getting what they wanted to get from the environments, corporate environments that they were in.
Yeah, I agree. What are you excited about? If I were to maybe sum it up even more tactically, what's waking you up every day and getting you excited about the work that you're doing?
Oh, sorry, look at you just coming in. So many things. Again, what really drives me, talking about Black women being the CEOs of their homes, and creating more entrepreneurship, and having brands help to be a part of that story, to empower women, and serving Black women and the Black community at large, because that the Black woman is also the CEO of her community, if you will. So that's really exciting to me. Also, NFTs are super exciting. We are sitting on an archive of 50 years of incredible, iconic covers. I cannot wait to take that into the metaverse from an NFT standpoint. Just beautiful covers. And I'm excited about some of the partnerships that we've been talking about in the influencer space. There's such an incredible opportunity. I'm also excited to go to festival and help everyone on the phone.
Travel.
Us July 4th weekend at the biggest and best festival in the country. So I got a lot to be excited about.
I love that. I'm super excited too. Yeah, for those who don't know, we can drop a link, we can send and follow up. Definitely slide into Pauline's LinkedIn and ask more questions for sure. But I mean, this time has flown by. I could literally talk to you forever.
You ask my LinkedIn DMs.
Your LinkedIn.
I don't have enough.
Slide in there, guys. No, you have so much, you're so open. So thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with us today. We could do this forever, and we'll definitely have you on again.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the thoughtful conversation, Tiffanie. Thank you, Lataria. Thank you, Brand Innovators and Influential.
Oh, thank you. So you said you were excited about, obviously Essence Fest, but NFT covers, I'm excited about that. Like, that is such a great idea. You have to do it fast because
Listen,
I can see. Yes.
Yeah, it's iconic covers. So, and even think about, like, one of my favorite covers is 1991. Look at me dating myself again, but I was in the second grade. No. I was in the second grade, but 1991, when Naomi Campbell was on the cover, and this was at a time when general market publications were not putting Black models on the covers. And it was just so inspiring to see her on that cover, as well as like coverage of, like, you guys know that I love fashion as well, and just seeing like Paris Fashion Week covered and through that lens. And so just the incredible covers that Essence has done over the years that have been really inspiring. I think in the metaverse, would be
no brainer.
Yeah, for sure. Just the fact that Essence has been leading the cultural conversation for 50 years is incredible. To see that step into like Web3 is going to be so fantastic to watch. We are all watching, Pauline. So thank you so much, because it has to happen. And when it does, it's going to be fantastic.